Indiana faced a familiar foe in DeWanna Bonner last night, and it was apparent she was on a mission to completely dismantle her former squad. But Caitlin Clark refused to let DeWanna Bonner control the game, as last night showed. The atmosphere was charged. The pointed glances told all. This culminated in a pivotal play that became the game's main talking point. Clark asserted her place, making her position perfectly clear to Bonner. Which athlete earned your support in this showdown? Was it Clark or Bonner? Share your take with us. Let's break it down. For those who witnessed the contest, the storyline is already quite familiar. It was the Indiana Fever against the Phoenix Mercury. The primary focus, however, was DeWanna Bonner. When she faces the franchise that drafted her, the matchups often get intense. On this occasion, however, Caitlin Clark wasn't a passive observer content to just watch from the sidelines. Quite the opposite. She made her impact felt on the court. And the broadcast captured it all. First, let's establish some vital context. DeWanna Bonner is a seasoned veteran with an extensive career, numerous titles, and a decorated history that validates her on-court intensity. She is an agitator, an expert at psychological warfare who clearly relishes that specific role. Add to that the narrative of her controversial exit from Indiana to team up with Alyssa Thomas. Clearly, that particular history has a long shelf life. The fan base remembers it well. The locker room remembers it. And Caitlin Clark certainly has not forgotten, as this rivalry has been building for months. From the game's start, Bonner's focus was palpable. Each move to the basket, each attempt, each whistle she earned had an extra edge. The clear subtext of her play was a message to Indiana. You let me go, and this is the price. Initially, her strategy was effective. Bonner was scoring at will, posturing after plays, and engaging verbally with opponents, which visibly impacted the Fever. The team showed no signs of retreat. In fact, they were highly motivated. Hull. Lexi deserves major praise in this game for matching Bonner's intensity level directly. Bonner brought the heat, but Hull brought an inferno. She finished at the rim, played stingy defense, and showed she would not be intimidated. This was the precise counterbalance that the Indiana Fever required. And the bench. With each basket Hull converted, the broadcast showed Clark, Boston, and Mitchell reacting with a postseason level of energy. The game's turning point came later on. Bonner and Hull became physically entangled in a sequence of aggressive, hard-nosed basketball that resulted in a contentious foul. Caitlin Clark specifically was incensed. She leaped up. She verbally responded to Bonner, and her expression was completely unambiguous. Her look conveyed, "No, not this evening. You will not intimidate us." The encounter then escalated from competitive to contentious. Let's analyze this moment, as it shows Clark's unique mentality. The typical sophomore, particularly one viewed as a newcomer by the league, might defer to the veterans by remaining silent on the bench. But not this one. She possesses a certain competitive fire, an ironic, "Is that so?" demeanor, indicating she is engaged in a mental contest as much as a physical one. Bonner approached the Fever's sideline, continuing to talk, and Clark immediately retaliated. You could practically decipher the exchange. Clark was effectively stating to her, "Score all you want, you won't intimidate our team." What is interesting is that Bonner was visibly surprised by the retort. She is accustomed to being the most dominant, assertive, and tenured personality on any given court. So when Clark challenged her, her reaction was telling. She gave a slight grin. She looked away. But the message was received because in this league, respect is not granted. It's earned. And Clark earned a measure of it right then. To be entirely fair here, Bonner still put up a solid performance. She scored. She played her game. And she made an impact. What will be remembered, however, is not the box score. It is the verbal exchange. It is Clark's refusal to concede ground, establishing a new standard for her squad, and signaling to Bonner that the league has evolved since 2015. We are in 2025, and the WNBA's new headliner is on the Indiana sideline, ready to enter the game and command the narrative. We must now turn to the unspoken issue, DeWanna Bonner's contentious departure from the Fever to join forces with Alyssa Thomas. The entire ordeal's impact remains. The fan base makes light of it. Announcers tend to avoid it, But the athletes understand. They are aware that Bonner prioritized a relationship above the team's cohesion. And while her decision is her own to make, the residual competitive spirit it ignited within the Fever organization has not faded. So when Bonner arrives in their arena with an air of superiority, Indiana views it as a direct challenge. And Caitlin Clark, as a fiercely proud competitor, did not hesitate to remind her that Indiana is no longer rolling over. One aspect to admire in this instance is how the Fever responded collectively. Following Clark's retort, the entire bench's energy was elevated. Boston was more vocal. Mitchell was more vocal. Players not even in the game were on their feet, encouraging the team. That is a clear display of leadership. It's not just about statistics, but the culture you cultivate. Clark did not need a 40-point game to challenge Bonner. She did it by proving that this Indiana team has a resolve, and she's the foundation of it. I can already anticipate the counter-arguments. Oh, she saw limited minutes in that key stretch. Or, Bonner scored more, so who was truly put in their place? That misses the point. The sport is more than data. It is about influence, key moments, and who dictates the psychological tempo. Bonner had points, yet Clark created the moment that is generating all the discussion. In athletics, that carries more weight than a box score. Also important to mention is the ultimate highlight, the final sequence. Lexi Hull, a tenacious player all evening, sealed the emotional win by causing Bonner to fall to the hardwood, and the Indiana bench erupted. It was a declarative statement. Clark, Boston, and Mitchell were all up, celebrating, pointing, as the entire building felt the momentum shift. And a still frame reveals Clark's expression then. It was pure vindication. She understood. She knew that regardless of the final score, the victory was the message that Indiana sent. You do not intimidate us, and that's what makes this entire exchange so significant. It was not simply about one trip down the court or one foul call or one verbal jab. It was about a developing team, led by a second-year superstar, refusing to yield to one of the league's most established and vocal veterans. Clark didn't only challenge Bonner's dominance. She sent a message to the whole WNBA that the new generation is not interested in deferring to veterans. They are here to author a new chapter, one intense moment at a time. To be precise, after the foul was called against Lexi Hull, the Fever coaching staff promptly challenged the ruling. It was then that Bonner, instead of allowing the officials to confer, opted to walk toward the Indiana bench. A critical error, because you do not enter Clark's zone expecting a passive reception. Clark leaned forward, gestured back, and said something that made the bench erupt in laughter. The cameras captured it. Viewers on social media isolated the frame. The question is now being intensely debated. Did Clark neutralize Bonner with a single comment? Let's be realistic. Clark does not need to raise her voice to be effective. That is the genius of her competitive talk. It is witty, it is incisive, and it is more impactful than an overt tirade. Consider her collegiate career at Iowa. Remember when opponents would try to play her physically, and she would just offer a look that said, "Seriously? This is your strategy?" That same confidence was on full display in this instance. Bonner sought to intimidate. Clark responded with wit. And Bonner was not the only one who felt the shift. The officials seemed a bit unsettled. The contest was now not just a battle of skill, but of wills. The Indiana bench, now energized by Clark's defiance, began to applaud louder, contest calls, and answer every Bonner score with a unified response. It was no longer a simple game of basketball. It was high drama, and the audience was captivated by it. Let's move ahead to the fourth quarter. Lexi Hull scored on another difficult drive. The Fever bench erupted, and Clark rose to her feet again, staring at Bonner with a look that said, "You are not in control here." That is the key thing about Clark. She does not need to be on the court to alter the game's direction. She's a leader from the sideline, inspiring her teammates, and playing the sort of psychological games that can rattle even seasoned pros. By the game's end, it was not Bonner who was celebrating. It was the Indiana bench, cheering, and enjoying the sight of Bonner losing her footing on a defensive play. And who had the most pronounced reaction? Yes, Caitlin Clark. She did not just applaud. She made sure Bonner was the audience for it. That is the very essence of making a definitive statement. Let's widen the scope and discuss the greater significance. Some observers will say, it is only one game, a single interaction. No, this is bigger. This is about Clark confirming her role as not just a scorer or a highlight machine, but as a fierce competitor who will not defer to the perceived WNBA hierarchy. DeWanna Bonner has had a great career. That is undeniable. But Caitlin Clark represents the present. She is the one driving viewership, moving merchandise, and making the Indiana Fever a team of national interest. And when Bonner tried to assert her dominance, Clark delivered a clear message. This league is no longer yours. And let us remember, Clark is just a second-year player. She is still developing, still adapting, still adding to her professional career. If she is already this confident in challenging a veteran like Bonner, what will the next 5 years bring? Hint, they will not be easy for anyone who tries to challenge her. Fans across social media platforms quickly took a side. Some argued Clark needs to show deference to the vets. Others felt that Bonner must face the new reality. But this is the fundamental truth. Respect in professional sports isn't based on age or tenure. It is based on contribution. And anyone watching Clark knows she has already earned that. She is not waiting for Bonner's validation. She is claiming it, regardless of how Bonner feels about it. There is another, more nuanced element here concerning the Fever's identity. For many seasons, Indiana was a lottery team, often ignored, dismissed, and in a constant state of rebuilding. But now, with Clark, with Boston, with Hull's emergence, this team has a new confidence. They compete with a certain edge. And Clark's vocal stand against Bonner signals that this Indiana team is not intimidated by any opponent. And here is a bit of poetic justice for you. Bonner left Indiana seeking fulfillment, championships, and agency. And yet, here she is now, years later, embroiled in a conflict with the very organization she felt she had moved past. That is a fact of pro sports. The history is never truly gone. You cannot simply ignore the past. And that past confronted Bonner directly in the middle of a nationally televised game. The final point is that the Fever won the narrative. Even if the statistics show Bonner had an efficient game, what the audience will recall is Clark's defiant applause, Hull's critical defensive stops, and the Indiana bench's reaction to her falling on the court. Key moments supersede stats, and this key moment was Clark's. And for anyone who still questions if Clark can handle the physicality of the veteran-led WNBA, this game is the answer. She's not just managing it. She's returning it. You want to initiate contact? Fine. You want to engage in verbal jousting? Even better. You want to approach her team's bench? Then you should not be surprised when she responds louder, smiles broader, and ensures the cameras capture you looking rattled. This entire sequence is going to be replayed, analyzed, and shared for the next few weeks. And you know what? Clark is fine with that, because with every mention of her name, the Fever's profile grows, the WNBA gets more coverage, and Bonner looks more like a figure of the past than a star of the present. The point is, Clark did not just put Bonner in her place. She put everyone on notice that the league's hierarchy is changing. The torch is not being passed with ceremony. It is being seized with wit, with confidence, and with scoring. Caitlin Clark was not going to let DeWanna Bonner dictate the terms, and she proved it with one of the most memorable reactions of the entire season. The Fever are not backing down, and Clark is leading the charge. What is your take on this confrontation? Was this Clark's most effective response yet? Leave your comments for us below. Please like this video and subscribe for more in-depth analysis.